Today we are taking a look at the 10 greatest strongmen of all time according to science. I'm going to point out this is Auntie Liz science.
And I wore my lab coat, or the closest thing
you have to a lab coat.
Yes.
So what we've done is come up with 5 different ways to determine the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
And then we've taken the leaders from each of those.
Yeah.
Explain, because
right.
this was fun. I mean, Liz was telling me about this the other day.
I was a bit excited.
And I was like, my mind was blown by the amount of different ways you've tried to determine who is the best of all time.
All right, first off, disclaimer, science is a stretch. It's more like maths, but even that is a stretch.
Okay.
So first off, right, let's just look at list number 1 and dive right in, because these are common ways that you could look at who is the greatest of all time. So we've tried to sort of, let's just go straight into list number 1, which is the most wins at the World's Strongest Man. So as you can see, these are the guys with the most title wins. That's the numbers in black. So Marius has won 5, Zydrunas, Brian, Magnus, JP have won 4. Now, the numbers in red, where there's a tie, I've used the most amount of international wins as the deciding number. Okay, so here you have in order then. So like Bill and Tom are tied, but Bill has more international wins overall. Yuko, Jeff, Bruce Wilhelm are tied, and you can see that.
So based off World's Strongest Man wins, and then Liz is using the most international wins as the tiebreaker.
Which I think is fair.
Marius Pudzianowski comes out on top with 5 wins. Zydrunas, he is in second. He's got 4 World's Strongest Man wins, however, he has won 82 international competitions.
Yeah. So I mean, looking at this, so if we think about does that seem fair? I mean, and it's not to be rude, I wouldn't have Bruce Wilhelm on my top 10 of all time. He only actually did 2 strongman competitions in his career. This was pre-sport of strongman. This is when it was purely a TV show once a year.
Yeah, I mean, not taking anything away from Bruce.
No.
It was one competition, all the athletes were invited, there was none of the qualifying system, which makes World's Strongest Man so much harder.
Yeah.
Once that was introduced, 94 time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a great list of athletes.
It's a great list, but it does exclude people like Thor, who have done incredible things in the sport, just not at that one competition in terms of wins, yet he had all those podiums.
Indeed.
So, you know, it's not the most balanced list.
Still, there you go. That is the leaders when it comes to winning World's Strongest Man. So this one's interesting to me. You've put the most major wins. Now, what do you class as a major?
Well, there's no, hard and fast rules about what constitutes a major. So I've included the World's Strongest Man, the Arnold Strongman Classic, the Shaw Classic / Strongest Man on Earth, all for 5 years now. What else? The Rogue Invitational.
Yep.
IFSA World Championships.
Sure.
So that was the World's Strongest Man competition that happened parallel to the World's Strongest Man. A lot of the top guys went there. Fortissimus.
Yep.
And on your advice, is my disclaimer, the 1987 Pure Strength competition. It happened in place of World's Strongest Man.
Yeah, I felt that needed to be in there because you had the 3 best of the era, and there was no World's Strongest Man that year.
No,
so it's harder for the old guys because there was just less major comps, I guess.
Yes,
and less that we know about. The records are much more up to date for more modern competitions, so it is difficult to sometimes include some of those older guys. So you need to give them something.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no hard and fast rule about what's a major competition. I tried to choose where there was the top guys of that era in the lineup, maybe more events than a standard competition, or it's heavier, something special about it in terms of separating it from other shows.
Okay.
So as you can see, Zydrunas massively out in front in this list. He has 8 Arnold Strongman Classic wins, which is seriously bumping him up. He's also won the World's Strongest Man 4 times. He won the IFSA World Championships twice, and he won Fortissimus.
So Brian Shaw in number 2 there on 9. Obviously a 3-time winner of the Arnolds, 4-time winner of World's Strongest Man. He's won the Shaw Classic twice.
Yes.
Without question, one of the greatest of all time. Marius Pudzianowski. So we saw Marius was top of the World's Strongest Man list, but they are the only 5 majors that he's won.
Yeah, he competed in the Arnolds, was never able to win it though. It definitely didn't suit him as well as Worlds did at the time.
However, tied with Thor Bjornsson there, but Marius has won 43 international competitions.
Yeah, and there's a couple more men on 5 as well. Jean-Paul Sigmarsson, if we take into account the Pure Strength 1987 and then his 4 World's Strongest Man wins. Mitchell Hooper has won 5. He's won the World's Strongest Man, the Arnold Strongman Classic twice, Rogue Invitational, and now the Strongest Man on Earth as well. Magnus stands alone with 4. Alexei Novikov makes this list, which is nice to see. World's Strongest Man, Rogue Invitational, and I completely forgot when we were talking about what's a major. I included WUS, so the World's Ultimate Strongman, 2018, 2019, and the 2021 competition in Bahrain. I didn't include the later 2021 in Dubai because half of the field were competing in Scotland.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Also, I'm a big fan of him. Nice to see Derek Poundstone on this list.
Yeah, Derek made the list too. He's a 2-time winner of the Arnolds and he won Fortissimus.
He did indeed. He was an amazing athlete. Never managed to win Worlds, but should always be talked about as one. Right, your next list is the most international wins. This is also your tiebreaker, isn't it? If people end up tied.
Yeah, so, and there is actually a tie here. So Hugo Girard and Danis Seguera stand there. So in that instance, I used the percentage, so their win ratio, if you like. So for Hugo Girard, who has done far fewer competitions than Danis, I gave him the edge because he won a higher percentage.
That's fair. Yeah. And obviously, like, the standard of competitions varies that athletes compete in.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, Ivor Schmackstall has 26 international wins,
Yeah.
just one behind Brian Shaw. But Brian Shaw has won more prestigious competitions.
And absolutely. So this doesn't really account for the quality of competition or the opposition that you're up against.
But still, you can only beat who's in front of you. And to win 82 times internationally is quite insane when you look at Zydrunas' list there. I mean, 100%. Mariusz Pudzianowski in second place, almost 40 places, 40 wins behind, and he was known as the Dominator. It shows how incredible Zydrunas was. Thor Bjornsson in third place, Brian Shaw, Ivers, Krzysztof Radziakowski with 23 wins. He won a number.
He competed a lot as well.
He did indeed. Irvin Katona as well, someone that was a regular on the Champions League. Hugo was an amazing strongman, someone that won so many big competitions. He won a lot of the big super series against the likes of Mariusz Pudzianowski. He could just never seem to put it together in those major competitions such as the Arnolds or World's Strongest Man. And then you've got, like you said, Danis Segueras. I mean, Danis is a good strongman, but you wouldn't think of him as like top 10 of all time.
Not necessarily, but this is why we look at it in lots of different ways.
And then Jean-Paul Sigmarsson at number 10 there. Interesting to see him in this list because obviously we don't have quite as much information for back in the earlier days of Strongman, but it just shows how good that man was.
He really was. And again, where he's tied for 12, I gave him the boost based on his percentage of wins.
So this is a very interesting list. You've looked at the international win percentage. Now, you told me that they had to have at least competed in 10 competitions to be on this list.
I had to use a few because otherwise you're going to have guys who competed 3 times and won twice.
Bruce Wilhelm competed twice, won twice.
Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, it was the only competition at the time. So, so the criteria to be in this list, you have to have won a major.
Yep.
Okay, so any of the majors that I described earlier, you have to have competed in at least 10 international competitions as well.
Okay. So Derek Poundstone making another list at 36%. Brian Shaw is on there once again at 41%. Thor Bjornsson at 43%. Bill Kazmar, Jean-Paul Sigmarsson.
So Jean-Paul is actually 44.4, but I don't want to ruin my graph by stretching it further.
So he's slightly ahead.
He's slightly ahead of Kaz.
Jeff Capes at 47%. Interesting to see those three.
Yeah.
They were such competitors back in the day, all three next to each other on this list. Yuko Ahala, someone that didn't have the longest career, but he had a very dominant career, winning 50% of his competitions. Mitch Hooper is at 52%. It shows how good he is right now in the current crop of strongmen. And then it comes to those two names again. Zydrunas Savickas only second on this list. Mariusz Pudzianowski 70%. Winning 70% of the international competitions he competed in. Now that's why they called him the Dominator.
Absolutely. I mean, this list really favours guys with a shorter but very successful career. So the less you compete, it's going to go in your favour here.
Of course.
People like Zydrunas, who have competed so much. I mean, Marius did like 60-something competitions, but Zydrunas did 150.
Well, the interesting thing was Zydrunas, he kept competing beyond his best years.
And that can
he's
hurt
probably
you here as
hurt
well.
him on
Yes.
this type of list, whereas Marius got out when he was, relatively at the top.
Yes.
And, I mean, to have a 70% success rate is...
It shows why he was called the Dominator.
Absolutely. And it shows that he should always be in that conversation of one of the best of all time.
Yeah. So on to the final slide, and now I was looking at the most event wins in strongman careers. Now, granted, this may be where I started to lose the plot a little bit, but we've already had instances like the percentage of wins, where maybe it benefits the guys with the shorter careers. So I thought I'd try and balance that out with something that maybe benefits the guys with that longevity and longer careers. So as we can see, Zydrunas right at the top there with 305 event wins, right down to Derek Poundstone with 56, where Tom and Yanni are tied. I went with the fact that Tom has won the World's Strongest Man 3 times, so I gave him the edge there. But none of these names should be huge surprises. Really nice to see Kiliashkovsky in there as well.
We've done all your different lists, so now we have the drum roll for the best 10 strongmen of all time.
I need to explain myself.
Explain.
Okay, so what I did, first off, there are 3 men that made all 5 of these lists. So for those men, I took, if we take Zydrunas, for example, he's first in this list, second there, first there, first there. I add up those numbers, and whoever comes out with the lowest number, it's kind of like golf, yeah?
Okay.
They're on top.
Okay.
Okay, so I did that for the guys who were on all 5 lists.
Yeah.
Then for anyone who made 4 lists. Then for the guys on 3, 2, and 1. And took the top 10 based on that scoring
So should we have a
system.
drum roll and reveal our top 10, or Liz's scientific top 10 of all time? I like that you've taken emotion out of this. You've just gone with the science, or the facts.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, we're using science very loosely.
Very loose science in this video. Now, this is a great list. It is a very good list of athletes.
No one's denying that these are some incredible athletes on this list. Whether or not we would all have them in our top 10. I mean, if I just use in sort of my heart, I can't imagine ever putting Bill Kazmaier in 10th place.
Well, for me, I would always have Brian and Zydrunas as my top 2. I think this shows why so many people will talk about Marius as being one of the best of all time, and rightly so. The man was an absolute dominator in his time. He was the best of his era, and he had an amazing career. But there's other factors that come into things. I mean, Brian Shaw and Thor, I think, they're definitely top 4, top 5. Jean-Paul Sigmarsson, and you're going to have people that will totally agree with this list, and some people that will totally be against it.
Yeah.
I mean, John Paul was amazing. Derek Poundstone in 6,
He
a man
snuck
that's
in.
never won World's Strongest Man.
Because he was on 3 of the lists. So,
Yes.
he did well to be on 3 of them.
Yeah.
Just to be really clear, so Zydrunas, Marius, Brian were the only guys on 5 lists,
Yeah.
all 5. Thor was the only man on 4 lists. Jean-Paul and Derek were on 3. And then Mitch, Magnus, Yuko Ahola and Bill Kazmaier were on 2 lists. And Mitch was the highest or the lowest scoring out of those. So, and if you look at that trend, I mean, the guys at the bottom half haven't competed as much as the guys in the top half. There's so many variables, like certain ways of looking at it hurts the earlier era.
Of
And it
course.
shows how hard it is to compare guys from different eras.
But we'll put that all aside. This is science. This is
This is
Auntie Liz science. Well, like this bro science? I'm calling this Auntie Liz science.
Yes.
This is the top 10 best strongmen of all time. Zydrunas Savickas taking number 1. Marius Pudzianowski in number 2. Brian Shaw is 3rd. We're going to get a lot of hate for that. Thor Bjornsson
Sorry,
in number
Brian.
4. Jean-Paul Sigmarsson 5. Derek Poundstone in 6. Mitch Hooper 7th. Magnus Ver in 8th. Juho Ahola in 9th. And Bill Kazmaier in 10th. Do you guys agree with this list? I don't 100% agree
No,
with
I
this list.
don't either.
But I like it. It's been fun. It was fun listening to Liz kind of come up with all these different methods of how to determine who is the best of all time. It's a fun debate. Leave your comments below. Let
Leave
us
your
know
list
thoughts.
below as
Yeah,
well.
we want your
more
lists.
importantly.
We want your comments. Don't forget, if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and we'll catch you guys next time.